If everybody wants to start getting in your seats, we're going to start right at 7 because people joining us around the country come on right at 7. So what time does the 7 o'clock meeting start? 7 o'clock. Very good. So who's in this group, this room, for the very first time tonight? Anybody? Oh, good. A bunch of you. Very good. First of all, welcome. And second, let us warn you in advance, you're liable to experience us just a little different than other meetings of other fellowships that you may have attended. Primary reason that's liable to happen is that we intend for you to have a very different experience here. What we do here in this room is we take a look at the suggested instruction for a step or so a week directly out of this book, and we use this book in 12-step recovery. Why? Process described by the authors of this book has been proven to work with addicts of the hopeless variety, addicts to alcohol and other substances. So what we do here is not tell you what the book says, because I don't know what it says to you, but I do know what it says to me. So the idea is I'm going to show you how I find what it says to me and encourage you to have your experience. And if we both do our job, we'll share a spiritual experience in this room tonight. Anyone been here before and can witness for these folks that happens? So by the show of hands, what they're telling you, those of you watching online and those of you here for the first time, in 12-step recovery, when we speak of a spiritual experience, we're talking about a sensory experience. You'll feel it, and when you do, I'll know, and I'll call it to your attention, because we would teach you to talk to you about the power we call God without giving you a demonstration of the power. Fair enough? So, tonight we're in steps 5, 6, and 7. The dreaded step 5, I'm not telling anybody that, nobody, I'm taking that to the grave with me. We're going to take a look at that, and then we're going to look at 6 and 7, probably less understood steps, because there's not a lot of instruction in the book. How many of you looked for the instructions for 6 and 7 and thought they left something out? Any of you know what I'm talking about? Thought there must be a supplement to this book. 6 and 7 are described either in how it works or later in the chapter into action, and so because it's an all-inclusive sort of manner of living they describe, you'll see it as we lay it out for you, but we'll take the mystery out for you. So you want to go in your book to chapter 6, page 72. And for those of you who are looking at your book, you'll see that it's entitled Into Action. We always like to call, if you're new to the manner of living, even if you're not new to the fellowship, how many of you have made an effort to think your way into better acting? And that's how most of us end up in recovery or what have you, right? I'm just not going to pick up no matter what until I do. Anybody? Nobody else? That was a foolproof plan for everyone but me? Okay. So what the authors discovered is sometimes it takes a while for the mind to catch up, but if you'll move your feet, the mind will catch up. So they want us to get into action. Does that make sense? And we're in a chapter called Into Action because we're going to act our way into better thinking, since thinking our way into better acting wasn't working. Okay, so it says, having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? Now they ask that question and they put a question mark. They want us to go introspective. How many of you didn't know what to do about a personal inventory you made? How many of you didn't even know how to make the inventory and someone showed you? So that's what we've learned over time, is that people picking this book off a shelf have a harder time gaining this manner of living. It has to be imparted, and that's just a lesson they learned a long time ago, which is why the foreword says to show others precisely how we recovered is the main purpose of this book. Someone showed me, I'm going to show you, not what it says to you, what it says to me and how I found it. Make sense? Okay, so we've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. Is that what you've been trying to do? I like to call our attention to us in the fellowship in the room, and then who's we? How many of you have been taught that we are we? Because people say that, but that's not true. They've told us clearly who we is, and if we're we, then my experience doesn't align with theirs, then I'm free to make up anything I want. Right? But if I know I'm reading their testimony and I have no right to alter any of it in any way because it's not my testimony, it's their testimony, and no one gives a shit about how Joe recovered. They want to know how AA's recovered so they can emulate that, because rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. Right? The first 100 who recovered, and their story the first several thousand, so it has efficacy. Okay, so have we been trying to get a new relationship with Creator? Where's my atheists and agnostics in the crowd? Or the people who came in that way? Right? So half of the original fellowship were atheists or agnostics. They didn't remain that way. They said, our experience shows you need not be disconcerted. The experience changed their mind. Right? So why would I want to get a new relationship with a Creator I don't believe in? And I believe in the authors, right? The author said half of them were atheists and agnostics, but they learned through the process that the world wasn't causing how they thought and felt. It was reflecting how they were thinking and feeling. And once they knew that, they said, well, by God, I'm having a shitty time in creation. So if I'm having a shitty time in creation, the only solution is check in with Creator. Got it? So if you're having a shitty time in creation, check in with Creator. That's why I did an inventory. That's why I did a searching and fearless inward search, and now I'm about to be cast out, those things that have been blocking me. Does that make sense? Okay. So it says we've admitted certain defects and have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We've put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. How many of you have done an inventory at least once? Did you put your finger on a weak item or two? So as many people as we have here, we know how many weak items we had, right? Some of them in common, some unique, right? Okay? And those of you who haven't, that's a product. Those are the things that are standing in my way. Remember, the fourth step is not a crap hunt. It's not about dirty secrets. There are no secrets in the realm of the Spirit. It's about finding the treasure within you, right? The great reality. So we're going to see what's blocking my consciousness of that great reality, and those things I'm putting my finger on, the weak items, are some of those things, which is preparing my testimony, what I was like, what happened, what I'm like now. Yeah? Okay, so now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we've admitted to God. When we say God, what are we talking about? Power. We come to believe in power. So if you've got prejudice about the word God, remember we're talking about the sensory presence of God on us, in us, and through us. Tangible, right? And how does it express itself? The author said power, peace, happiness, sense of direction flowing into them. How many of you have had such a flow? Power, peace, happiness. So that we're not talking about theories here, right? We're talking about realities. That's why they bear witness to that reality. Okay? To God, to ourselves, and to another human being. And then it says the exact nature of our defects. So remember, they chase it back to fear. So the nature of all defects apparently has something to do with fear driving them. Yeah? And we're going to get to know ourselves better. We're going to find out we're human by sharing it with another person. And in doing that, when I seek my fellow man, right, I sought my God eluded me. I sought myself I could not see. I sought my fellow man, and I found all three. Right? So this is old wisdom. This brings to the fifth step of the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. This is perhaps difficult. How many of you found the fifth step difficult? How many of you thought it difficult and found it easier than you thought it would be when you took action? So if we try and think our way through a fifth step, it's probably going to remain difficult. If we act our way into a fifth step, we're going to find that we're free of it sooner than we thought. We'll suffer longer thinking about it than we do going through it. Does that make sense? And I'm saying that not for the people who've told a few fifth steps or have heard a few fifth steps, but for those of you who are still fearing it. All of us fear it. That's why, but we're telling you, fear doesn't go away till you confront it. on the other side of fear is freedom. Okay. So especially discussing our defects with another person, we think we've done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. So how many of you have thought that with them? Hope they didn't see that. We'll just push that way down. So what they say is after they admit that was their strategy, there's doubt about that. Remember, this is a book of experience. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. How many of you would have to agree with them? Have you ever done a solitary self-appraisal and then spun it a little so you looked a little better on the other side? Okay. So many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We'll be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. So everything they do is logical, so you can examine it with your logical senses, and it should help you spiritually on the other side, right? So you can't move into a conscious relation without examining it with your logical senses, because otherwise I would be moving into it unconsciously, right? So they're going to give us a reason, and then they're going to explain what they experienced after they faced that fear. So the best reason first, if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. So they called the step vital. What do they mean by vital?
Essential to life.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds dramatic, but typically when they describe a vital organ, it's not something you can take or leave, right? These people used the words they meant. They meant the words they said, and they agreed on every word. So when they use a word that sharp, although we want to gloss over it, we might want to think how important they believe this to be. Yeah? So it says we may not overcome drinking. So how many of you came here to overcome your addiction? How many of you just rested? Hey, the only one who knows is you, and sometimes you don't know. How many of you thought you were serious and then found out you were here just resting? It's the old cannot, will not thing, right? Right? I thought I was a will not until I found out I was a cannot. And once that animal's out of the cage, it's hard to get back. How many of you had some clean time? Let the monkey out. Hard to get back in a motherfucking cage, huh? They don't just go back in. You're going to have to catch him sleeping. Yeah. So, time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Anybody? And for this purpose, everyone after Dr. Bob's a newcomer. So if you've got less than 90 years of sobriety, something like that. How many of us have tried to skip this vital step? Thought we'd keep a little shh. Did you suffer? Because in the human condition, when we're doing something we know we ought not be doing, eventually it's hard to deal with, isn't it? Okay. So trying to avoid this humbling experience, they've turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. Have you ever had that experience? Persevered, wondered. You wouldn't have described it that way, Tyler? Persevered, yeah, but wondered, nah. So did anyone ever tell you there is no rest of the program? First of all, people think sitting in the rooms is the program. That's not true. Sitting in the rooms is the fellowship. The program's in the book. That's why they say here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery, not here are the meetings we attended, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Because they meant the words they said, and they said the words they meant. So there is no rest of the program. It's a manner of living. How many of you have had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps and it's working with others? A good number of you. And how many of you are willing to at least consider getting someone to help you go through the process? So the minute you humble yourself to do that, you're already in step 12. That's how I'll include. You'll help them more than they help you. Because you humbled yourself to ask for something you need from another. It's more blessed to give than receive. And on it goes. Some of you felt that. Who felt that? So that doesn't come from up here. That happens in you. And we call that to your attention because that's the power we call God around here. Tangible and relevant. Right? Okay. So we think that the reason is they never completed their house cleaning. So an important part of my house cleaning is carrying this message to others. Not talking about it, being about it. Serving, right? They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. How many of you that have worked with others have discovered that those people showed you your judgments, your old ideas? See, my old ideas that I'm hanging on to, much of the time I don't even know I'm hanging on to them. And it isn't until I'm trying to help you that I find out I have that idea. And I can't help someone I'm judging, so I'm rendered ineffective, and I don't like to be ineffective. Anyone know what I'm talking about? And so it's a thing we learn. So they only thought they'd lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they'd humbled themselves. They put the word thought in italics. You wonder why? Anyone know why? The problem centers in the mind. So there I am. Now I'm all spiritual and shit, and I'm going to think my way into better acting now. Any of you relate? How many of you were thinking yourselves all spiritual and shit, and then something happened and you just went off the rails? Right? Fuck! Right? I've seen it happen. So we can't think our way into a state of being, right? And they know that. We think we can think our way. We got whole books written on how you can think or act your way into a state of being, but you really can't. All you can do is become aware of a state of being, and the minute you are aware of it, you're out of it. It's very fleeting. Okay, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. They put all in italics. Why? How many of you thought your life ended when you stopped using? How many of you get tired of hearing the story about what it was like, and now I'm all better? I don't even know what the rest of my life looks like till I learn I was made new back then, and then I walked into my newness after that, and I've got a whole life to live out in service, and I'm going to learn all kinds of things that I missed before. Does it make sense? The story hasn't been told. I just learned the facts about me. How could I? I was dead until then. Okay, so more than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He's very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. So how many of you have a persona that you like to put on for others? How many of you have more than one? How many of you have been confused by people's being confused by which one of you is there? So we relate to the actor. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. So for all of us that are looking for second chances, if we try and cling to those old ideas, that old persona, I still want to be the guy rolling up on the yard, and I also want to be this newfound saintly servant, there's going to be a conflict somewhere, right? And at some point I'm going to have to pick a path, right? I'm either going to have to hold on to that worldly persona and all the consequences that go with it, or I'm going to have to let go of all those old ideas and see what an authentic me looks like. And no one's more surprised than me at what an authentic me looks like. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Notice how they talked about a sensory experience. I want to enjoy a reputation, but I know I don't deserve it. Any of you go head to heart? It's hard to manipulate that, isn't it? The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. How many of you are familiar with sprees? Coming to his senses, he's revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. Any drinkers here? Got some vague remembrances? These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they'll never see the light of day. Where's the power found? Deep down inside. How many of you relate to pushing these memories far inside yourself? So I'm going to cover up the great reality with all my crap. That's going to obscure my vision. No wonder I have a shitty outlook on life, huh? So it's not a very good plan, right? So he's under constant fear and tension, and that makes for more drinking. So how many of you sober have done the same types of things, and the fear and tension may not have caused you to drink, or may not have caused you to use, but it caused you to act out in other ways that were difficult to explain? Okay. All right, so psychologists are inclined to agree with us. How many of you have sought psychiatric help in your journey? How many of you got arrested in your journey? You saw psychiatric help whether you knew it or not. They were reading your chart. Anyway, we've spent thousands of dollars for examinations. Any of you spend a little money on that stuff? We know but few instances where we've given these doctors a fair break. Hey, did you tell these docs the whole truth? Did you follow their advice? We've seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Why did I call that to your attention? Because rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. We think we're terminally unique when we get here, and we find ourselves in a book written 80 plus years ago. And if we're really honest, we've done everything here if someone explains it to us. Right? So we might have earned our seat, even though we think all these people are weird. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Small wonder many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery. How many of you discovered that when you went to your doctor seeking relief? Did they tell you you're exhibiting drug-seeking behavior? Kind of the way you got the system set up, you know what I mean? I come to you, I tell you this, I tell you what I can't take, you give me that. I sign the release, I take a 30-day supply in a day and a half. That's how we work it. Good. So we must be entirely honest with somebody if we expect to live long or happily in this world. Rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. So in all seriousness, the expectation is we're going to carefully consider who we're going to entrust this unburdening to, because it's serious business. It's life and death. And number one, I'm afraid to tell anybody anything because I'm afraid that it's going to get found out, and I don't think anyone knows, which is one of the big discoveries. People tend to know more than I think they know, but the fact is I'm afraid, and they know it, okay? And they were afraid too. So then it says we'll want to go, those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession must and of course will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. So what they're telling us now is if you have a religious practice which requires confession, by all means go to confession. But if you're just going to confess and you're not going to go through with the whole purpose of the step, which has to do with sharing your inventory and your ideals for a future, relationship goals and that sort of thing, if you're not going to get all of that out of it, then you may need to keep your AA practice and your religious practice separate. And so it says we often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. What's our problem? Driven by fear, 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate, and sometimes they hurt me, seemingly without provocation. But I invariably find that at some time in the past I've made decisions based on self which later placed me in a position to be hurt. Yes? So if they don't know all that about me, how many of you have presented to somebody who was sympathetic but thought, oh, well, they're just a fine fellow if they just quit slamming heroin? And then they quit slamming heroin, and then they may be fine outwardly, but they're not fine inwardly, right? And so we return. So they don't know, because they see the outside. They don't know what's happening on the inside. But somebody who sees and understands is going to feel us when they meet us. There goes my water. Okay. So what did I do? Okay, we cannot or would rather not do this, we search our acquaintance for a closed-mouth, understanding friend. Those of you working with people, you're hoping to grow spiritually into a closed-mouth, understanding friend. They've already set one of our goals. How many of you would have to admit we're not too closed-mouth or understanding in the early days, but it does get, yes? Some of us trade in information. True? So those are old tools. They're not tools where we're going, right? Okay. So perhaps our doctor or psychologist will be the person. It may be one of our own family, but we cannot disclose anything to our wives or parents which will hurt them and make them unhappy. We have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. So that's the one that you feel like you have to make, the amend you think you have to make, but you're going to hurt them worse by making the amend than you are by just keeping it quiet and moving on and not being quite that way, right? Or if you're not working with somebody because of the way you think they behave is deplorable or whatever, all these things. So they want us to know what's up so that we're honest about what we're seeking to do. Does it make sense? Okay. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected. So, understand what? Unaffected by what? Yeah, I understand they're in their search for the truth, not their truth, not my truth, the truth about them. And if they've found me, then the truth about them is I know who Papa is. I don't need to know nothing else, right? But if I'm affected by that, then I got to be honest, because I can't help them if I'm judging them. Make sense? Okay. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. See, what you don't get is every step we think of them in terms of I don't want to make that step, I don't want to do this fifth step, but the book's always about me. This isn't about what you should do. I'm guaranteed my spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, not yours. Do you understand? Every time I sit down to do a 12, I'm guaranteed a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if you follow through. And even if you don't, I might get a little buzz. So that's why I'm trying to get you to see the book's written both ways on purpose. Because this isn't for you. This is a book that if I'll do what these people say, it won't matter to me what you do. Notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be that one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. Do you think that's true in Phoenix, Arizona today? He makes a point. If you're afraid to tell your story because of a consequence that may come from someone discovering your story, then obviously no one is suitable. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter to me what your reason is. If you think there's sufficient reason, then okay. Does it make sense? If that is so, this step may be postponed only, however, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through it at the first opportunity. So how many of you have had the experience of holding yourself in readiness at the first opportunity and then found out that that opportunity presented itself and indeed you spilled it and you were still just as afraid? So you'll know, they're describing an experience. You'll know if there's a reason you should hold back, you'll hold back. If you're honest with yourself. This is about inward looking now. Eyesight without insight is spiritual blindness. So don't worry about what anyone else is doing. If you're ready, the teacher will appear. We say this because we're very anxious that we talk to the right person. It's important that he be able to keep a confidence, that he fully understand and approve what we're driving at, and he will not try and change our plan. So there's your specification for what you're going into. I approve of your search for the truth. I'm fully understanding that it's your search for the truth. I'm not going to get bothered by your truth, and I'm not going to let my truth get in the way if I'm spiritually connected. Right? You know the difference between my truth and your truth and the truth? The difference is the great reality and all the manifestations of self that come between us. Okay. So the rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always consider others. I'm sorry, what did I do now? I just went through all that again, didn't I? Okay. But we must not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. Guys, remember they're writing a book of experience. So you will know when you've decided who's to hear your story because you will waste no time. They're describing an experience. It's not their opinion. It's not what you should do. This is what happened to them. They were all just as frightened as us, but when they found who was to hear their story, blah! Got it? How many of you have had that experience? Yeah. So it says we have a written inventory and we're prepared for a long talk. So if they couldn't do it up until then, what they did to prove to themselves readiness is they prepared a written inventory and they were prepared for a talk when the messenger appeared. Yep. We explained to our partner what we're about to do and why we have to do it. That was a little interesting part of the book. They wrote it thinking they could send it out to the masses. They'd read it and recover on their own. They discovered there were complexities with that. They had a gentleman that was purported to have read it and recovered on his own, so they sent him a bus ticket to come to New York and tell his story, and he was going to be a chapter in the back. He was too drunk to get off the bus when he got to New York. So that story didn't make the pages. And we've learned that there's an impartation that occurs between people, right? So we are not usually able to explain to our partner what we're supposed to do when we've never done it before, nor are you expected to. If you've never done it before, that's why you might have someone they call a sponsor who will say, here's what I did. I was once thought and felt as you do, but I doubt I'd made much progress had I not taken action. Here's the action I took. Here's what I experienced as a result. If you'd like to go, I'm happy to help you with your story. If not, I got you, right? So he should realize that we're engaged upon a life and death errand. Whose? Absolutely. How many of you have figured out that there's no guarantees here? The oldest story in the book is I've got X number of years, and so, I mean, something about bearing witness, something about serving is immunity. That's what they tell us. Okay, most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They'll be honored by our confidence. So now they're talking about their experience again. They have the written inventory. They're prepared for a long talk, and they've found the person who's going to hear the story. And it said, we pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. What's every mean? Even that thing, huh? Even that thing with the, yeah. And the important thing, I know we giggle and we tell funny stories, but those things that I think are secrets, they're not secrets to me, and they were never secrets to God. And until I own that with another human being and experience the non-judgment from that human being, I'll never know the non-judgment of God. It's an important part of our growth. And I'll never use that part of my story to help somebody else, which is the only way I unpack. When I use that part of me that I'm so afraid you'll hate me when you learn it about me, when I use that, number one, to disarm, but then use it to help somebody else going through just that, all of a sudden, that was preparation. That wasn't suffering. So once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. How many of you have ever been delighted? That's not an accidental word, right? So how many of you have taken a fifth step and did experience delight? And how many of you have taken a fifth step and did not experience delight? So there was a condition. It said withholding nothing. Did you withhold something? Not everyone does. There's other conditions. I'm just checking to see where everyone is in the room. So some people experience no delight because they're holding back. How many of you, where's my people that held something back? Did the person you held it back from ask you what you were holding back? Those fuckers. Did anyone ever explain to you why? You can't lie to me about it. You're holding my hit, right? Because when you let it go, I'm going to experience your delight. I'm going to get that hit of power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction they promised when you get yours. You may still be too hungover to know what's happening to you, but I'll know what's happening to you. That's why I would call it to your attention. Right? That's why they do. It's happened to all of us. I'm not picking on you. All of us tried to hold something back, and we can't. A bunch of addicts, we're going to hold their hit. Ain't happening. Okay, something's going on here. All right. So, once we have taken this step with holding nothing, we are delighted, and then some other things they tell us we can look the world in the eye. Now, that is the experience of non-judgment. How many of you were so afraid to tell whoever that was, whatever that one thing was, you were so afraid to tell because you didn't think they would like you, and they either laughed or they cried or they showed you non-judgment, and you could all of a sudden connect with them. So they're describing a real experience they had. Most of us have had it if we've ever gotten free of that bondage of self, as we've had the experience of someone else telling us that, I get you. I feel your pain. We're going to be okay. And whatever you're holding in your mind thinking, no one knows this, no one's ever done anything as bad as me, ask yourself, does it have a name? If it has a name, you didn't invent it. Whatever that horrific thing is you think you did that no one knows about, if it's been named, you didn't invent it. Okay? So we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. Now look at what they describe here. This is in the 5th step. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. So now I know the reality. And they put that in front of a prayer they want me to say to a God I didn't know, but now I know. The subject of my experience, not the object of my belief. Right? Because I'm now feeling the flow. So the same way I knew when I grabbed that drink or that rig and did with it what I needed to do, what I was going to experience, and I could experience its effects before I did it, but I was going to do it anyway because I wanted it more powerfully. That's how you grow spiritually. Knowing the tangible reality of the power of the Spirit and the ease and comfort that comes from it. Right? Okay. So we begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs. How many of you got here with certain beliefs? But now we begin to have a spiritual experience. So they're comparing what they said. Half of them were atheists or agnostics. God did not exist or could not be proven to exist. But this experience changed their mind. Now I know what religious people are talking about. I may not like them any better, but I at least know what they're talking about. And sometimes I know that they don't know what they're talking about after a while. How many of you have learned that? How many of you have learned people in our fellowship don't read our book? How many of you have learned people in churches don't read theirs either? So it'd be a good idea for you to read your own book. Because if you let any of us read it for you, you've given us the power to think for you. You don't want to do that, right? Okay. So the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. How many of you had that happen? I'm better now. 4th step. I'm going to go tell all my homies at the meeting. Didn't do nothing after that because the problems disappeared. How many of you found out the problem had not disappeared? So it's a promise and a warning. This is simply a preparatory phase to get into the fitness step, which is the amends step. And if I don't keep moving forward into 12, which is the big amends, that's where I convert what I thought was a wasted life into a purposeful life, where all the things I thought were a waste have purposed me to be uniquely useful to someone who is dying in that experience right now. Yep. We feel that we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. Sounds a little flowery for a bunch of old drunks, doesn't it? What do they mean if we feel that we're walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe? How many of you have felt that free? You go to a meeting that people haven't done the steps and they'll tell you you're on a pink cloud. And you're like, okay, whatever fucking color it is, I'm in. I'm free of me for the first time ever. Right? Yeah, don't worry about the naysayers. Grow in the Spirit. This is ease and comfort in the world without going out in the world to get it. Handy little trick to know if you're an addict of the hopeless variety. Because I know where they keep it out there. Not far from here. In any direction. Okay. So, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. That's pretty specific, isn't it? How many of you, after a 4th step, found out being quiet for an hour wasn't as easy as it sounds? How many of you learned something about yourself in that hour? If you follow their direction, you do. You get real introspective in that hour. You discover things that you wish you would have said that didn't come up. Sometimes you discover things that you knew you should have said, and you say, I better tell you this little bit too. Right? Okay. So it says, carefully reviewing what we've done, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Why do I know God better after that experience? And I've just admitted every gnarly thing I've ever done to some other human being, and God has given me the signature of his Spirit confirming that I'm okay. And that's not theology, that's not principles, that's raw relationship. That's feeling the power, yeah? Okay. So then it says, taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. So we're going to go back to page 58 in a minute. 59, I always get it wrong, but Sean's here. He corrects me. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we've omitted anything, so we're going to do that in a minute. For we're building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? So what work have we done so far? I've done an inventory, and I've told somebody else about what I found, what I was like, what happened, what I'm like now. And they probably helped me discover what happened, because I'm still not too sure. Anybody know what I'm talking about? How many of you came in here a little rough? The rest of you got here on a winning streak, I take it. I was not conscious enough physically to be conscious spiritually, but I had people telling me, because I shook too bad. I had the DTs so bad I couldn't write, right? So I had to have someone actually write for me, and they told me what I was having happen for me, and I was seeing all these things happening, but I'm sure I was feeling something, but what I was detoxing hard. Anyway, are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? So we're going to jump back then to 59, and we're going to take a look at the first proposals and see. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Powerless when? Oh, no. I've heard for years about, I'm only powerless after I drink. Really? So why did I have to burn the house down first? I stopped drinking and then started again and ripped it all up. Anyone else? My friend Brad, a few weeks ago, gave us a biblical lesson. He said, how much power did Lazarus have to get out of that grave? Some of you are feeling that. So an admission of powerless means until that experience comes on me, I'm a dead man. And that is my experience. Yeah, some of you are feeling that. Joe, you just shot the fun meter. Drinking or not, I'm in trouble without power, right? Okay, and that our lives have become unmanageable. There's a dash, so they're continuing the thought, and they've talked to us about that in step 2, right? Did you guys look at step 2, what they said the unmanageability looked like? Should we go back to 52 and see what that says? Is it 50 or 52, Sean? 52. See, Sean's been here before. He might have read his book. Okay, so 52, he said we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. We were having trouble with personal relationships. How many of you discovered that after you sobered up? I copped to it because I thought all of my problems were alcohol related, and maybe might have been that wife's fault too. Like somebody, my powerless over alcohol, and my wife has become unmanageable. I've heard guys say that. But that aside, we were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. How many had that discovery? How many discovered that stone cold sober? We were a prey to misery and depression. Any of you have that discovery? See, that's a human condition apart from connection. So I'm always going to live in that poverty in this body until I connect. That's a human thing. not a religious thing, not a fellowship thing. It's a human thing. If you can relate to these things, then what you lack is power. And this power needs to be from within because, again, how much power did Lazarus have to come out of that grave? Those of you that aren't a student of that book, we'll get you in something else here in a minute. Then it goes on to say, we were unhappy, couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. And then they asked the question, was this not a basic solution of these benevolence more important than whether we would see newsreels of lunar flight? So rather than studying worldly things, would it make sense that I not be miserable all the time? That's what that means in modern language. Okay, so that's step 2, why I need the encounter. I've now had the encounter because I need power. I've got enough power that I've not only taken a search inward, but I've shared that story, which I was afraid to do, and I'm getting myself prepared to go out and tell that story or to do the things I need to do to get over this problem, yes? Okay. So then we made a decision based on that, right? We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And now I've done a 5th step. I'm still alive. I've felt the power of the Creator. I've got a friend. I've got a plan. What is insanity in Alcoholics Anonymous?
Taking a drink knowing you're an alcoholic.
What do the authors say, though? A lack of proportion, the inability to think clearly. I mean, the obvious thing is when we go use again, when it's completely to our detriment, right? But the fact is, isn't that a lack of proportion? Didn't I weigh that temporary release heavier than long-term comfort? Yeah. So this power has already started to restore me, or I wouldn't be this far in the process, right? Okay. And then it says we made a decision to turn our wills over to the care of God as we understood Him. Number 1, it's in italics, and number 2, you're not we. So it's never been a God of your understanding, because it's not your book. I don't care how many times you've heard it and how many fellowships are based on it, it's a deception. And I don't care if you want to deceive people, but I would suggest to you there's consequences. So what I would say is, you're not we. This isn't a God of my understanding. I'll have to read their book to see what they understood. They understood that once they experienced this power, they felt a cool wind of a mountaintop blow through and through that expressed itself as power, peace, happiness, sense of direction flowing into them, even though half of them were atheists or agnostics declared. They weren't talking about concepts. They were talking about powerful flows of the Spirit that people pointed out to them and said, that is the power we call God. And you can improve that. And being junkies, we said, really? Tell me more. That's what they understood. And why is it in italics? Because the God I understood then is not the God I understand today, because I have received His understanding. I'm a far more understanding fellow, and I didn't do anything to earn that. So I've received, those of you that study that other book, I've received the mind of Christ. Okay. So then it says we made an inventory, and then we... Got me? Okay. How many of you did not get the sense of delight when you did a 5th step? And of you, how many of you didn't hold anything back? Okay, so I'm going to tell you why that happened. Go back to step 1. Given that you were powerless, what could you have done different? So you're still clinging to your old ideas? You're clinging to a moral failure rather than a preparation. You're doubting the power of God to restore. You're doing something. Do you understand? It's not a condemnation. Now I'm just telling you, many of us cling to that. I admit my powerlessness, but remember, my powerlessness is my inability to control my emotional nature, to be useful, and so no wonder I was doping myself to death. I couldn't live in this world unmedicated. Right? I was designed as a human being to be dependent. None of that's changed. I've just changed what I'm dependent on. Does that make sense? Okay. So are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? The entirety of the instruction of the step is right there in that sentence. Did you see it? Let. Wow, isn't that interesting? We see those little phrases, let go, let God. Oh, isn't that quaint? The fuck does that mean, right? Have you ever been... They give you clues earlier in the book. They say we let God take us to better things. If I'll just follow in these footsteps, if I'll just serve without judgment, if I'll just go and bear witness and show kindness, all my old ideas will be exposed to me. I'll see miracles before my very eyes. I'll see the blind see. I'll see the lame walk. I'll see the prisoners set free in real time on this planet. We see it here every day. Every day. And we want you to know that all I have to do is stay focused on them instead of on me, and it's all taken care of. So the letting go is go make amends, get free. The big amends is serving others, and on and on and on it goes. Okay. Can he now take them all, every one? How many of you, even though you know all that flowery shit, like, I'm kind of fond of this one. So my friend Kevin and I will have an argument every once in a while about don't let fear steal you from becoming a better version of you, and he clings to exactly his teaching he knows, which is I'm made new instantly and I'm new, and I get all of that. I was made new instantly, but I didn't look new and I didn't smell new. And that took a minute to come into that new persona. Anyone know what I'm talking about? So what I'm saying is it's possible for both of us to be right. We tend to walk into our new way of thinking and smelling and looking. Yeah. So can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. Guys, if I don't get you anything else here tonight, please stop telling people you need willingness. Willingness is divine power. Tell God they need willingness. If you don't have it, ask God for yours. You understand what I'm telling you? People will condemn someone because they say they lack willingness. Dude, no one earned a seat in here without looking like they lacked willingness. But all of us, to a person, know how badly we wanted to stop and could manifest no action that showed it. Yeah? I always point out to people, I used to hear doing the same thing expecting a different result. Where's my hopeless variety? I did the same thing, no expectation of a different result. Right? This is going to suck. Watch. Got me? Because I lacked willingness, I thought, but it wasn't that. I lacked divine power. I lacked self-worth. I lacked hope. I lacked faith. And none of that was within me, because like Lazarus, I had no power to come out of that grave until I had my encounter. Okay, so then it says, when ready, we say something like this. So I'm going to read the prayer, and then we'll revisit just for a second. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. I suggest to you, you've now completed what you started in the third step. And a lot of people will hand you a card in the fellowship and say, here's your third step prayer and here's your seventh step prayer, and they put an amen in. But that would mean God didn't expect me to know fully what I was doing as I grew in consciousness of him. See, I didn't know what my manner of living looked like until I did an inventory, shared it with someone else, had them explain what I was going to do next, and then sorted out with them who I was going to go to first, to the wife, to the family, to the employer, and then all the other people I heard. And then in that process, I got free. And if we don't tell people that, then they don't know really what this looks like. So when I say the seventh step, I now know what it looks like. So the third step prayer was complete blind faith. I just asked for power to go inward, and please reveal to me and you. And then I'm going to write a testimony, and I'm going to go bear witness to your restorative power. Right? Thy power, thy love, thy way of life. Take away my difficulties that they may bear witness. I don't say anything. My difficulties go away. People notice. Because I was a train wreck. Go, dude, you don't have nearly as many problems. Yeah, I got God. He sees to it I got less problems. That's it. But I wouldn't know what that looked like until I did 7 and then went out and started making amends and started getting spiritually fit and started helping people and found out what my old ideas were. And then all of a sudden, all the limiting thoughts start going away and big, massive, expansive experiences start happening. Okay. So it says, then we have completed step 7. So hopefully we took the mystery out of it. Next week we'll look at 8 and 9. That's no reason to hide. That's the freedom step. I know you're looking at it and you're going, if I knew I had to pay all that shit back, I'd have never taken it so much. But God will work it out, right? All right, see you next week. Thanks.